So the Chiefs' longtime reign of the AFC West is officially over. At least that's what some are saying as we head into the draft. And in today's video, I'll not only break down why I think they are very wrong, but why the evidence is pretty clear. I've also got to talk about the Raiders officially paying for some of their former players' salary that is currently rostered by KC, some more recent roster moves made by the Chiefs, and more. But first, how about those? Alright, first up, I wanted to confirm with you guys something hilarious that I mentioned was a possibility earlier in March when the Chiefs signed Gardner Minshew to be the backup QB for this upcoming season. Basically, the Raiders owe Minshew $3.1 million in 2025 for letting him go this offseason, getting out of his contract a bit early, but the caveat was that $3.1 million would be offset depending on how much the Chiefs were actually going to be paying him. So basically, if the Chiefs paid Minshew more than $3.1 million, the Raiders would owe him nothing at all. The results are in, however, and not only are they not the father, but the Chiefs are paying Gardner Minshew a base salary of $1.17 million. That means the Raiders still have to pay him roughly $2 million this season to play for the Kansas City Chiefs. They're paying 2/3 of his salary to help them in the meeting room, on the practice field via the scout team, and to glean from arguably the best active head coach / QB duo in the NFL right now. That's honestly hilarious, and I love this so much because it's the Raiders, the Chiefs' greatest rival throughout history. Minshew himself said as soon as he knew he was getting released, he wanted to come and play for the Chiefs. He feels like he has a lot to learn from them still and could really grow from sitting behind Mahomes and learning things from both Patrick and Big Red. From what I've gathered, he hopes to learn all he can and take every element possible from KC's winning culture with him for wherever he ends up playing next. Well, I'm certainly glad he's here, and the fact that he's being paid the majority of his salary by the Las Vegas Raiders makes it absolutely incredible. The state of the AFC West is in an interesting place at the moment, with some around the NFL already using their hot takes to create clickbait that the Chiefs, who have made it to 3 Super Bowls in a row and won the AFC West 9 years in a row, will no longer reign supreme in the West. And I obviously disagree with that for a bunch of reasons that I'm going to get into here in a minute, but I will also not be so biased in my fandom to not give credit and props to some of the other teams here around the West. The question is, will the improvements these teams are making be enough to truly bridge the gap? A gap the Chiefs have kept themselves very far apart from all these other guys for a very long time. The Raiders have made a bunch of moves this offseason and should, in theory, get better in 2025. They got rid of their coach, hired Pete Carroll as the new head coach, traded for Geno Smith from Seattle, extended Max Crosby, and then, of course, already have Brock Bowers, and are being mocked by the majority to draft Ashton Jeanty at pick 6 in the first round. That is definitely going to help out the offense. Even with those moves, though, I still think Vegas probably finishes 4th in the AFC West, because the Broncos and Chargers are only getting better. The Chargers have Harbaugh for his second year, and in 1 year alone, he took the org from 5-12 in 2023 to 11-6 in 2024 and actually made the playoffs. They got obliterated by the Texans 32-12 with Herbert throwing 4 interceptions, but still, that roster was not a ton different than 2023, and you could argue without Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, things were much more difficult for the offense, but Jim Harbaugh is just that good of a coach. Ladd McConkey also certainly helped with that on offense, and funny enough, they just re-signed Mike Williams to a 1-year deal. They also beefed up the trenches on both sides of the ball, something Harbaugh is always adamant about, and they also signed the former Steeler and Najee Harris to a 1-year deal worth up to $9.25 million. And I like this signing for LA because I think Nagy is an upgrade from J.K. Dobbins, who they had last year, and he's had injury concerns year in and year out. He still, though, in spite of that, racked up 900 yards in just 13 games. Meanwhile, Najee Harris has been very healthy his entire NFL career and has averaged over 1,000 yards a season in his 4 years with the Steelers. So they get a guy that's healthy, productive, and is a bit of an upgrade from J.K. Dobbins. Then they will most likely also draft a pass catcher early to pair up with McConkey, especially since Joshua Palmer, their 3rd most productive pass catcher last year, signed a multi-year deal with the Buffalo Bills this offseason. All in all, I think the Chargers might be KC's most competitive division rival, but the Broncos are also getting better themselves. They slowly but surely are getting out from under that god-awful Wilson contract They owe him $85 million over 2 years since letting him go. This is the last year where he's going to take up $32 million in cap space for 2025, but next year they are completely in the clear and moving on from that disaster. Denver, of course, can make do with this because they have Bo Nix on his rookie deal. They also have some playmakers on offense, Cortland Sutton, Marvin Mims. They then signed tight end Evan Ingram to a 2-year deal, and they're already great top 5-ish defense in most categories last year got even better. They added 2 former 49ers and linebacker Dre Greenlaw and safety Talanoa Hufanga, and Sean Payton is obviously another year into building the roster the way he wants it. All right, real quick, I want to shout out a couple ways you can support the channel. You can get some HBTC coffee of Benchwarmer Brew. This has got origin notes of Mexico and Ethiopia, a smooth medium roast, and it is one of the most popular blends of the lineup. Then you can also snag some HBTC merch. We've got Dad Bod Season, X Factor in honor of Dante Hall, mixed with Xavier Worthy, of course, and much more. Links to both the coffee and merch are in the description down below. Meanwhile, the Chiefs, who have won the West every year since 2016, will probably once again win the West, but I can understand why some people think the gap in the West is narrowing a little bit. I mean, you have guys like Colin Cowherd saying he thinks the Chargers will win the West this season, but comments like that have been said every year by somebody. I mean, remember when Rich Eisen said the Raiders were going to win the West a couple years ago? Classic. But until the Chiefs no longer win the West, I am not betting against Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid when it matters most. They brought back a lot of the same guys, yes, but that was a Super Bowl caliber roster. I know they got blown out, but they once again made it there despite facing a bunch of injuries all along that roster. However, they did upgrade in a few key places worth mentioning. Yes, they did trade away Joe Thuney, but at the same time, they elevated the floor of the left tackle spot in Jalen Moore by quite a bit, in my opinion. They are keeping Trey Smith around, hopefully for years to come via a long-term deal sooner rather than later. They brought back Kareem Hunt, who will have a proper offseason to prepare himself. Pacheco will then be further removed from his ankle injury, ankle surgery, all that. And then there is some very intriguing upside there with running back Elijah Mitchell, who they just signed to a pretty cheap deal, especially if his health can hold up. I think they then draft a difference maker at running back as well, and the running back room is a definite upgrade to me from last year. The receiver room is largely the same, but remember, last year Rice was out for most of the season, got injured week 4, then Hollywood missed most of the season himself, eventually came back, but was still kind of shaking off the rust of just not playing all season long, and then Worthy was a rookie, but now Worthy is entering year 2 on a very high note near the end of last year, where he averaged 6 catches for 68 yards and also scored 7 total touchdowns in the back half of the season. Then Rice will most likely, yes, be suspended at some point, but will definitely be healthy and one of the main targets for Patrick Mahomes. And then you'll also have Hollywood Brown around all season long on a 1-year prove-it deal. So that's a great trio. Plus, they should hopefully draft another receiver as well, maybe even in the first few rounds like they've done the last few years, and keep adding to the talent of the room. That's an offense I can definitely get behind, especially with an upgrade at left tackle, considering the blindside protection for Mahomes last year was catastrophic, and that was putting it lightly. The left guard play may very well go down, whether it's Kingsley who ends up being left guard or somebody else, because of course Joe Thuney is elite, so you're going to take a dip there, but I think elevating the left tackle play is more important than anything else along the O-line. Next, the tight end room has Noah Gray probably stepping up in his role, a guy who already, when targeted, has been extremely productive, helped in part by the attention Travis Kelce gets for sure. But Jared Wiley, he'll be back. He tore his ACL in November of last year, but he will return at some point, and we can't forget that he led all FBS tight ends and touchdowns with 8, 5 of them happening in the red zone. Then yes, you obviously still have Travis Kelce around, and he will most likely be playing his last year with the team. That remains to be seen, but it's at least the last year of his contract. That comes with a pretty hefty $19.8 million cap hit, one that has some fans not really happy about because it's a lot. But the guy has produced like a top receiver in the NFL since Mahomes became the starter and is paid roughly half of what the receivers he produced like were getting paid. He's definitely earned this last $20 million in my opinion, and it's not like he's fallen off a cliff from a production standpoint. Last year at the age of 35, Kelce was still 3rd in receptions and 4th in receiving yards among all tight ends. He was 35. The average age of a tight end in the NFL is about 27 years old, so he's still producing at a very high level. And he is at the age also, I get it, where the offense shouldn't need to run through him, but that's the direction I believe things were looking to be going. Rice was going to be the center point of the offense last year until he got injured week 4, and Kelsey's production then skyrocketed. Regardless of his age, he's going to be a valuable target that Mahomes looks to quite a bit, especially in key situations. So yeah, the $20 million cap hit is a bit high, all things considered, but KC won't have any long-term effects of that contract since they are dealing with it all in 2025 rather than adding void years, and I know he will still make some pretty key plays this season. So while the offense, if health holds up, Big Key should take a step up, the defense should actually take a couple steps up here. The D-line is predominantly the same. Mike Dana, George Karlaftis, FAU, Malik Herring, they're all returning. Then Charles Omenihu got signed to a great one-year prove-it deal worth up to $7 million, and he literally said this last week. Give me a full season to do this right and see what the results are, alluding to what we are all hoping for this year, and that is a career year as he looks to cash in next offseason. Of course, Chris Jones is also still around the line as the literal centerpiece. Derek Nottie and Turk Wharton are gone, yes, but Mike Pennell's back. They added Jerry Tillery, and he's definitely going to be a productive guy in the system. Then they will definitely add to the room via this very deep defensive tackle draft class. They retained Nick Bolton as the green dot play caller / brain of the defense for Spags, with Drew Tranquil and Leo Chanel still around, but the biggest addition might be cornerback Christian Fulton. He's an outside corner, with Jalen Watson most likely being opposite him on the other side, and that's going to allow Trent McDuffie to play inside where he was a first-team All-Pro slot corner in 2023. This is going to help tremendously in coverage and allow the D-line to also be more effective because guys should in theory be getting open much less efficiently. This will also hopefully allow Chamari Connor to play safety where he's definitely better. Jaden Hicks will quite possibly fill the void left behind by Justin Reid. And then of course you still have Brian Cook around back there as well. Someone else who's officially back for another year is defensive back Nazeeh Johnson. He signed his deal with the team late last week, to which many thought was actually him signing his tender the team placed on him, and they were all like, no way is Nazeeh Johnson worth $3.2 million, which was the cap hit it would have been. Well, the only problem with that is that $3.2 million isn't guaranteed, so he opted for more guarantees but less of a cap hit overall. So if there's any confusion out there, I am telling you he's not going to be $3.2 million of a cap hit. I have no idea what it will actually be, but he's a fine piece to bring back. A guy who is literally a special teams ace, very athletic, another year removed from his ACL repair, and is fine in the rotation as a cornerback 5 on the roster. The cornerback room became thin very quickly last year after they traded away L'Jarius Sneed and Jalen Watson broke his ankle, so they asked a lot of him, and it was a struggle at times for sure. But this year, there's even more depth, and if that allows McDuffie to kick inside to the slot, this is a literal game changer for the defense. So I say all that to say this. If the national media tries saying the Chiefs' reign over the West is over, based on the roster construction I just broke down and how I'm seeing it, it's really hard for me to believe that at this point in time, especially if they land a solid 2 to 3 contributors in the draft and the luck of health falls on their side this time in 2025, like it has in so many years past. 2024, of course, was an awful year with injury luck. It was riddled with injuries on both sides of the ball and is more of an outlier season than anything else, at least how I'm looking at it. I recently had Seth Kaiser on the channel last week and we broke all this down in much more detail, but I did see a couple comments asking why we didn't bring up one of the biggest problems on the team in Matt Nagy. I mean, I've said in multiple videos now how I would have preferred some fresh blood to be brought in that room, thought it would be a good thing, but there sadly won't be any offensive changes happening this season, confirmed by Andy Reid himself at a presser back in like February. That is unfortunate, but I'm going to reiterate what I've said several times. The offensive coordinator does not call the plays for the Kansas City Chiefs. That's Andy Reid, who literally relays a code word of the next play he wants to be ran. The OC then uses that code to locate the full play call on the play sheet and then relays that to Patrick Mahomes. Matt Nagy isn't a tremendous help to the offense, but he's also not really the problem that some are trying to make him out to be. I still think the offense will be much better this year, especially if their health holds up. And if that's the case, it's not going to be because of Matt Nagy. I don't discredit the OC too much when the offense struggles, but I also don't give the OC too much credit when the offense does well. And neither should any of you. Doug Peterson, Eric Bieniemy, Matt Nagy. I don't care who relays the plays from Andy Reid to Mahomes. Big Red runs the offense, and it's really not a debate. Now, if you want Nagy gone, I get it, but the reality is nothing seems like it's going to be changing this year from a coaching standpoint on offense, so it really just is what it is in that regard. Next up, I found this worth mentioning. The Chiefs now have 7 international markets they can potentially play football in one day. They already had Mexico, Germany, Austria, and Switzerland on the list, but now also have the UK, Ireland, and Spain as part of the NFL's Global Markets program. There's a bunch more they can now do in these countries, but my main takeaway is that they have the most countries of any team in this program with 7, so they are literally the world's team, and opportunities will be explored to play regular season games in any of these markets as part of the NFL's rotation of international series games. Ireland, personally, for me, would be one for the ages. A trip back to the motherland. Sign me up. Something that some coaches want to be signed off on is actually a ban on the infamous Tush Push play in the name of player safety. Sean McDermott, Bills head coach, said even though the data doesn't show it right now, he's concerned about the safety of players during the Tush Push with the force being applied to the QB from behind. I think the only guy to get hurt on this all year, by the way, last year was Chris Jones, who lined up horizontally. He lined up sideways, which obviously isn't a great idea. So no, I don't think the Tush Push is going anywhere personally, but Andy Reid weighed in on it today, saying he would rather defer to the medical professionals on this one, let them take a deeper look into all the analytics of player safety and all that, and quote, if it's putting a player in a bad position, then you probably have to do something about it, but if it's not, then it's a heck of a play. Something funny about McDermott wanting to ban the Tush Push, by the way, is I'm pretty sure the Bills ran this play the second most in the NFL, only behind the Eagles, and they also attempted 4 or 5 of them alone in the AFC Championship. Well, my question to McDermott is, if this is so dangerous, then why does he keep having his team run that play? That doesn't make a ton of sense, but neither is some people preaching player safety in regards to the Tush Push being banned, yet also potentially wanting to add an 18th regular season game. That's being discussed right now during the new league year meetings. I mean, in what world does adding more games help out the health of the players they are trying to protect? I think we all know the answer to that, and at the end of the day, money talks, okay? If they add more games, even just one more, it makes the league a piss ton of money, more money than we could probably even imagine. So while I'm not sure the Tush Push will go away anytime soon, I'm even less confident that 17 games will ultimately be the most regular season games played by NFL teams in the next few years. But hey, let me know your thoughts on all that. Would you like to see 18 regular season games played if maybe there's one less preseason game and then also 2 bye weeks? Or are you of the opinion that 17 games was already one too many? Also, make sure to let me know your thoughts on how the state of the AFC West is shaping up and your way too early predictions on how you think it'll actually end up by the conclusion of the 2025 season. And until next time, let's go. Let's freaking go. How about those?